Hi guys, there was a question from one of the homework assignment. This is from section 2.4. This was problem number 1. So it's just asking us to solve and check basically this equation. Solve and check. So one of the students had a question about it. So I'll just go ahead and work it for you. So our equation says 1/6x plus 2/3 is equal to negative 1/2. So obviously you do have an option here, just kind of directly deal with the fractions. In other words, as you know, to solve any equation, you have to isolate the x. So you can start by subtracting 2/3. And then, of course, do all the basic arithmetic combining fractions. Now, there is another option that I want to share with you. You may already remember this from previous math courses. Anytime in your equation, you have like different number of fractions, the easiest thing to do, you can actually remove all your fractions. So that way it'll be easier to solve. But again, you don't have to do that. You can obviously solve it the way it is just by dealing with the fractions, but I'll show you the simpler option. Now, the first step is to find the least common denominator of all your denominators. I'm sure by now you know from our previous chapters, between 6, 3, and 2, of course, the LCD, the least common denominator, is 6. So we're going to multiply both sides of our equation by 6. Okay, now this will always remove any fraction that you have. So anytime you have an equation with, whether it's 2 or 3 or 4 fractions, always find their least common denominator of all your denominators and then multiply both sides by that. In this case, of course, our LCD is 6. So we're going to multiply both sides by 6. So what happens, of course, as you multiply by 6, then this becomes, of course, 6 over 6 times x. Also, as you distribute, 6 times 2 becomes 12 over 3. Also, on this side, 6 times 1 becomes negative 6 over 2. So now, as you can see, 6 over 6, of course, reduces to 1. So that just becomes x. 12 divided by 3, of course, is 4. And also, negative 6 divided by 2 is negative 3. So the beauty, of course, is that the solution here is exactly the same solution for this original equation. In other words, by doing what we did, you didn't change the solution, you just made your life a little bit easier. So now to isolate the x, we're going to subtract 4. So your solution is, of course, negative 7. Okay, so again, in this case, obviously, they want us to check it, which means that when they say check, you always want to go to original equation. Now, once you go to original equation again, you can use the same idea to remove the fractions, or you can just kind of deal with the fraction. But right now, our solution, at least our candidate, is negative 7. So I'm going to go ahead and erase it so I can show you how to check that also the solution that is truly solution. So remember, I'm just going to box it, and then I'm going to erase up here, and then show you that it really does check, right? It does work in the order. That's what checking means, right? Checking means to go back to original equation and replace all the x's with that and see if it really works, okay? So I'm just going to say check. In this case, we're checking, of course, negative 7. So the question is 1/6 times negative 7 plus 2/3. I'm going to put a question mark because we are checking, so we don't know if it's going to be negative 1/2. We hope that it will add up, the left-hand side will add up to be negative 1/2. But that's why I put a question mark as we check it. So obviously, negative 7 times 1 becomes negative 7 over 6 plus 2/3. So now we want to know, is that going to be negative 1/2? So obviously, as you can see again, we have two fractions. We want to combine them to one fraction. So we have to find the LCD. Again, between 6 and 3, LCD is 6. So we're going to multiply 3 by 2 to make it 6. But again, don't forget, what you do to the bottom, you have to also do to top, okay? So we're going to multiply the denominator by 2 so we can make that 6. So then we can combine them. But also we have to multiply the top by 2. So now we'll see if that's going to turn out to be negative 1/2. Now this is what? Negative 7 over 6 plus 2 times 2, which is 4 over 6. So as you can see, since you have the same denominator, you can actually combine the numerators. So that simply become negative 7 plus 4 all over 6. So again, the question is that the same thing as negative 1/2? Let me actually move it up a little bit. So I'm just going to move it right here. So what is negative 7 plus 4 over 6? Well, that's just negative 3 over 6. And again, the question is that the same thing as negative 1/2? And of course, as you can see, 3 and 6 have a common factor of 3. So as you reduce, 3 goes to 3 one time, 6 goes to 3 two times. So at the end of the day, that check mark, I should say the question mark, becomes a check mark because you do get the same exact value on both sides. Okay, so let me make sure you can see that. So that's it. So basically, not only we solved it, so we also show that the -7 actually is a solution because it checks in the original equation. Okay, hopefully that helps.